I'm Elisa Hayes, 29, and I'm the ghost in my own family. Last Sunday, I was standing on my parents' immaculate patio in Terrytown, Austin. The air was thick with the smell of barbecue and that familiar, stifling tension. My father, Richard, I was holding court at the grill, and my brother, Evan, the investment banker, was bragging to his friends about some new acquisition. I finally found a pause, took a small breath, and said, "I'm actually looking at buying an apartment." The chatter stopped. My mother, Susan, let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, honey, be realistic," she said, her voice dripping with pity. "You'll never own property like your brother." Evan smirked from across the patio. "She'll be playing on her computer forever." Their words just hung there in the thick Texas heat. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? The one whose dreams were just a joke to them? Let me know your story down in the comments. I didn't fight them on the patio. I didn't argue. I just held their gaze, a secret burning behind my eyes, because they had no idea who I was. Fast forward 2 months. My phone is blowing up. Frantic, messy calls from Richard, from Susan, from Evan. I don't answer a single one. I just wait. Then, the text from Evan comes through. "Elisa, you have to help us. We're ruined." I looked at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then I texted back 4 words. "Get off my property." How did I get from that patio, their laughter ringing in my ears, to this? To understand. You have to understand the Hayes family. Growing up in our house, you had one of 2 roles. You were either the golden boy, or you were the scapegoat. Evan was born for his. He was Richard and Susan's mini tycoon. The one who understood real money. I was the quiet one. The ghost. The girl who disappeared into the glow of her laptop. When Evan went to Wharton, my father framed his acceptance letter. Literally. He hung it in his study, like a trophy. When I got a full-ride scholarship for computer science to UT, my father just frowned. "Are you sure you don't want to just do marketing, Eliza?" he asked. "It's a little more suitable." It took me years of therapy to finally understand what that was. It wasn't just simple favoritism. It was a system. In a dysfunctional family dynamic, there's often a golden child. This child is chosen to carry all the family's hopes, their dreams of success. They become a walking, talking billboard for the family's worth. That was Evan. But a system like that needs balance. It needs a scapegoat. It needs someone to absorb all the family's anxieties, all their fears of failure, their deep, unspoken discomfort with anything or anyone different. That was me. Evan was their success. I was their anxiety. And for years, I endured it. Every Sunday, the same barbecue, the same thick, smoky air, the same condescending questions. I'd sit there, pushing food around my plate, while Evan held court, talking about his portfolio or his latest acquisition. My parents would just beam. "That's our boy." My dad would say, "He just gets it." Then, the spotlight would inevitably turn to me. "So, Elisa," my mother would say, her voice always a little too bright. Still, tinkering with that little coding project. I'd try to explain. "It's an AI-driven financial analysis app," I'd say. "It uses predictive modeling to identify market." My father would just pat my head. Literally, pat my head like I was a golden retriever. "That's nice, dear. That's nice." And then, right back to Evan. "Now, Evan, tell us again about that hedge fund." My work, my passion, my entire life. It wasn't real to them. It was a little project, a hobby. After a while, I stopped trying to explain. I just nodded. I smiled, and I let them think I was the failure they needed me to be. Their dismissal became my fuel. Every laugh, every pat on the head, every "That's nice, dear." I collected them like kindling. I stopped trying to explain. I just worked. I'd leave those suffocating Sunday barbecues, their condescension literally ringing in my ears, and I'd drive to a small, shared office space downtown. The fluorescent lights of that co-working space felt more like home than my parents' perfectly maniciled lawn. There, I'd meet my co-founder, Leo Kim. Leo was my real family. He was a quiet, brilliant CTO who saw the world in lines of code. Just like I did. For 3 solid years. We lived in that office. We coded. We debugged. We pitched. And we drank so much stale coffee, we probably destroyed our stomach lining. We were building Elysian labs. While my family thought I was playing on my computer, I was whiteboarding predictive algorithms. While Evan was bragging about his Christmas bonus, I was desperately trying to secure our Series A funding. And while they were all laughing at me on that patio, I was just days away from signing a valuation deal that put Elysian Labs at 8 figures. Leo was the only one who knew the truth. He was the only one who knew the numbers. He'd see me walk in on a Sunday night. Mayef tight. Still fuming from a family call. And he wouldn't say a word. He'd just turn his laptop screen toward me and point to the user growth chart. Let them talk. Elisa, he'd say, a small smile on his face. They have no idea. We're building the future. He was right. They had no idea. And really, how could they? This is something I've thought a lot about. This blindness to illegible success. My family. They were obsessed with real money. They understood things they could see. They understood a bank. A law firm. A stock portfolio. A brick and mortar house in Tarrytown. That, to them, was real. My success? It was illegible. It didn't look like their definition of wealth. It was just lines of code on a screen. It was user data in the cloud. It was a digital asset that had no physical form. In their eyes, if you couldn't touch it, if it wasn't a heavy, polished thing you could show off at a barbecue, it simply didn't exist. My brother's investment fund was a real job. My 8-figure tech company was a little project. I stopped being angry about it. I just let the work speak for itself. I let their blindness be the shield I built my empire behind. And I knew, one day, I'd build something they couldn't ignore. After that last barbecue. The one where Evan smirked and said I'd be playing on my computer forever. Something inside me didn't just break. It crystallized. The anger. The years of quiet humiliation. It all burned away. What was left was this cold, hard clarity. I wasn't building an empire anymore, just to prove them wrong. I was building my exit. I stopped going to the Sunday barbecues. I just said I was busy with my project. They didn't push. Why would they? The ghost was just being a ghost. My project became my entire life. I was at the office with Leo almost 24 hours a day. We hammered out the final bugs in the algorithm. We optimized the user interface. We worked until our eyes burned. And then, the offer we had been waiting for finally came through. Not just an investment this time. A full acquisition offer. An 8-figure valuation. When the money hit my personal bank account, my hand wasn't even shaking. I just stared at the number on the screen. All those zeros. It didn't feel real. It was just data. But it was the one kind of data my family would finally be able to read. I didn't buy a new car. I didn't go on vacation. I opened a real estate website. And I wasn't looking in Tarrytown. I wasn't looking anywhere near their old money. Manicured lawn world. I was looking downtown. High up. I found it in a week. A penthouse. The kind of place that seems to float over the city. Wrapped in glass. It had this staggering view of the entire Austin skyline. It was everything, my parents' heavy. Darkwood home was not modern. Sharp. Unapologetic. And new. The price was $5 million. I walked through the empty space once, with the real estate agent. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I could actually breathe. I saw the place where I would build my new life. I'll take it, I said. The agent smiled. All teeth. And started pulling out his briefcase. Wonderful. We can start the mortgage application immediately. With your financials. I'm sure. No. I cut him off. That won't be necessary. I'll be paying cash. The look on his face. That look was the appetizer. Signing the papers was a quiet, clinical affair. Just me, and a very surprised lawyer. As my pen moved across the dozens of pages, the only thing I could hear was my mother's voice. echoing in my head from that day on the patio. You'll never own property like your brother. I pressed the pen into the paper. You're right. I thought. He'll never own property like this. I held the keys in my hand. They were cold, heavy, and real. They were legible. I didn't tell my family. Not a word. I called Leo. Want to see the new Elysian Lab satellite office? I joked. He walked into the empty living room, looked out at the view of the Capitol building, and just started laughing. A full, deep laugh. Well, Elisa, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. This is one hell of an About Us's page. He was right, but I knew I couldn't just disappear into my new life. That wasn't enough. After a lifetime of being invisible, I needed them to see me. Not for their approval. God. No, not for their apologies. I needed them to finally, with their own eyes, to be forced to see what they had refused to look at for my entire life. I started planning the housewarming. I didn't send a text. I had invitations professionally designed. Thick, cream-colored cardstock. Minimalist. Sharp font. Eliza Hayes invites you to celebrate her new home. I sent one to Leo. I sent them out to my entire tech team. To my investors. To the artists and friends who had been my real family. And then I mailed 3 more. Addressed to Mr. Fiverly, Richard Hayes, Mrs. Susan Hayes, and Mr. Evan Hayes. This wasn't a celebration. It was a reckoning. The night of the party, my penthouse was gleaming. I'd hired a team to fill it with minimalist furniture, abstract art, and so many white orchids, it looked like a tech gala. The Austin skyline glittered outside the glass walls. A perfect, sprawling backdrop. The place was buzzing. Not with my family's old money friends, but with my world. Tech investors, venture capitalists, digital artists, and my real family, my Elysian Labs team. With Leo standing right at the front, raising a glass to me from across the room. I felt solid. For the first time in my life, I was standing in a room that I had built, surrounded by people who actually saw me. Then, my doorman buzzed the intercom. Your family is here. Ms. Hayes. I took a slow, steady breath. Send them up. The elevator doors opened, and the 3 of them stepped out directly into the party. My father, Richard, my mother, Susan, and my brother, Evan. Their reaction was exactly what I had pictured for months. Pure, unadulterated shock. They looked around, their eyes wide, trying to process the scale of the apartment. The 30-foot ceilings, the crowd of strangers, the sheer wealth of the place. My mother, clutching her pearl necklace like a lifeline, found me first. She rushed over, her voice a low, frantic whisper. Elisa. May God. Who do you work for? This place is. It's incredible. Is this the CEO of your company? My father was more skeptical. He scanned the room. His eyes narrowed. Already judging. Is this your boss's place? Eliza, you shouldn't be throwing a party of this scale here. It's a liability. It's reckless. But Evan was just furious. He'd shown up in his usual, perfectly tailored suit, expecting to be the most important man in the room. And he wasn't. He looked around at the actual billionaires mingling by the bar, and his face just curdled. He walked right up to me. That familiar, cutting smirk already, sliding into place. Nice gig, Elisa. He sneered, his voice low, so only I could hear. Finally landed a big one. Did you? Which tech bro owns this place? Hope you got a good deal. He thought I was a guest. A plus one. He thought the only way I could ever be in a room like this was on the arm of a successful man. I just smiled. I didn't say a word. I let them marinate in it. I let them walk around for an hour, sipping champagne they assumed someone else had paid for. I let them swim in their own wrong assumptions. I even overheard my father explaining to a venture capitalist that his son, Evan, was in real finance, while his daughter dabbled in computers. I let them dig the hole. Then, it was time. I walked over to the glass staircase, picked up a champagne flute, and tapped it gently with a small spoon. The buzzing conversation of the party died down. Everyone turned to look at me. I could see Leo in the front, grinning from ear to ear. I looked out at the crowd. And then I found them, my family, standing together near the window, looking confused and annoyed at the interruption. "Thank you all so much for coming," I said, my voice clear and steady. It didn't even shake. I know this move was sudden, but I wanted to celebrate my new home with all of you. I saw my parents exchange an uneasy glance. Evan was still smirking, waiting for me to introduce my boss. "I've heard a few questions tonight," I continued, and I just wanted to clear the air before the toasts. I looked right at my mother. "This isn't my boss's penthouse." Her smile wavered. I looked at my father. "It's not a liability." "Dad?" And then I locked my eyes onto my brother. "And it's not my boyfriend's. I didn't land anyone." I let that hang in the air for one long, delicious second. "It's mine. I bought it. $5 million. Paid in full. From my little coding project. Elysian Labs." The room was completely silent. You could have heard an orchid petal drop. Then Leo started clapping. And in a second, the whole room erupted in applause and cheers. But I wasn't watching them. I was watching my family. It was better than I could have ever imagined. My father's jaw was slack. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut. My mother's face went completely white, her hand flying to her chest. Hair champagne flew tilting dangerously. And Evan. Oh, Evan. His smirk didn't just fade. It evaporated. It was like his entire face collapsed in on itself. He just stared at me. His eyes blank. His perfectly constructed world. The one where he was the golden boy, and I was the ghost. Just shattered. "How?" my mother whispered. But her voice was drowned out by the noise. "You're kidding," Evan muttered. To no one. I just stood there. On my staircase. In my home. Surrounded by my people. I raised my glass to them. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the invisible one. They were. They left the party in a daze. I didn't get a single angry text. No missed calls. No, how could you? Nothing. For 2 whole weeks. There was just silence. It was like I had thrown a rock into a pond. And the ripples were so big, they hadn't even hit the shore yet. I didn't care. I went back to work. Well, not really work. After the acquisition, my main job was consulting. And I was already setting up my new venture with Leo. I was free. I was breathing that penthouse air. Meanwhile, across town, in the world of real money, Evan's life was catching fire. See? My brother's small, traditional investment fund, the one he was always bragging about, the one my parents had also invested heavily in, was built on a very old, very stuffy model. He managed money for other old money Terrytown families. It was stable. It was practical. Until it wasn't. His entire fund, his entire niche, was suddenly, violently, tanking. Clients were calling him furious, pulling their money out in a panic. Why? Because a new, disruptive, AI-driven financial app had just hit the market. An app that used predictive algorithms to automate trades, outperforming his entire boys club fund by a staggering margin. This app was a ghost. They called it. It came from nowhere. And it was faster, smarter, and more ruthless than any human trader. It was a machine. Evan was leveraged to the hilt. He had bet everything on his practical model. And this ghost was bankrupting him. He wasn't just losing his clients. He was losing his own money. He was losing our parents' money. He was in full-blown panic. I heard about it from an old high school acquaintance. "Have you talked to Evan?" She'd texted me. "He's losing his mind. Some new tech app is destroying him." I just looked at the text. I knew. Of course. I knew which app it was. You see, the final, beautiful, the poetic part of the story. The part Evan still hadn't figured out. He never once bothered to look at the name of the AI competitor that was destroying his life. He never bothered to read the About Us page on its website. He never saw the name of the founder and chief architect of the algorithm that was taking him apart, piece by piece. He had no idea that the ghost in the machine that was bankrupting him was me. Elysian Labs wasn't just my little coding project. It was the weapon that was dismantling his entire world. And he was so blinded by his own arrogance. He couldn't even see it. That's when the frantic calls started. The texts. The desperate, pleading voicemails. And then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, my doorman buzzed. "Miss Hayes, your family is in the lobby." I paused. "Send them up." I stood in my marble entryway as the elevator doors opened. The three of them stepped out. But these weren't the same people from the barbecue. They were shadows. My father. Richard. I wouldn't look at me. He just stared at the gray, polished floor. My mother, Susan, was visibly trembling, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. And Evan, the golden boy. He just looked broken. His tailored suit was wrinkled. His hair was a mess. His eyes, usually so full of sharp, cutting arrogance, were just empty. My mother spoke first, her voice a thin, cracking whisper. "Elisa, we need your help." Evan just stared at the floor, silent. My father finally looked up, his face gray. "Your brother. His fund is gone. Elisa, everything. It's all gone." My mother let out a small sob. "The house in Terrytown," she whispered. It's in foreclosure. The bank is taking it." And then she did it. She surged forward, her manicured hands grabbing my arm, her nails digging into my skin. It was the first time she had touched me in, I don't know, maybe a year. "You're doing so well. Elisa, your company. It's so. You have to help us. You have to fix this. He's your brother. He's your brother." The magic words. The words that were supposed to unlock a lifetime of guilt. The words that had always worked. I looked at them. The three people whose approval I had once craved more than air. The three people who had built their identities on the fact that I was a failure. I waited to feel something. Anger. Pity. Old. Familiar. Pain. I felt nothing. No anger. No pity. Just quiet. A deep, cold, peaceful quiet. I gently unhooked my mother's fingers from my arm. I walked the few steps to my front door. The heavy, solid oak door of my home. I pulled it open. The city of Austin, my city, was sprawling out behind me. I looked at my father, at my mother, and then, finally, at my brother. "Get off my property." The words landed. Sharp. Final. Not screamed. Just stated. A fact. Their eyes widened. Stunned. "Elisa, please," my mother pleaded, her hands shaking. "We're your family." I just shook my head. "Once, you made your choice," I said. "Now I'm making mine." I closed the door on their stunned, broken faces, and I didn't look back. I didn't watch them leave. I turned around, walked over to my glass wall, and just watched the rain fall on the city. Their downfall was never my goal. It was just a consequence of their pride, their arrogance, and their willful, profound blindness. My work wasn't to save them. It was to save myself. That night, Leo and our old team came over. We ordered pizza and drank champagne. Sitting on the floor of my living room, mapping out our next venture on a giant whiteboard. We were alive. We were building. And I was, for the first time in my entire life, completely and totally free. There's a unique, quiet kind of grief, isn't there? When you have to make the choice to let go of your own blood, just to find yourself. People talk about the duty of family, but they never talk about the duty you have to save your own soul. They don't talk about the profound, aching pain of realizing that the people who were supposed to build you up are the very ones trying to suffocate you. Closing that door wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of self-preservation. It was the final, necessary cut. It was choosing my own future over a toxic past that had tried to write me off as a little project. So, for anyone out there, anyone who has ever been made to feel small, or less than, or invisible by the very people who should have seen you first, Your value is not determined by their inability to see it. Build your own empire. Build your own home. And never, ever let them hold the keys.